and other development organizations worldwide. Make your online application now for Diploma in Monitoring and Evaluation, Diploma in Grants Management, Diploma in Conflict Management, Diploma in Disaster Management, Diploma in Water Sanitation and Hygiene, and many more. The cost for diploma courses is 800 euros, while postgraduate courses cost 1,200 euros. Visit www.strategianetherlands.nl for more information.
We have over 200 courses, and we have also partnered with over 100 institutions, and we have over 20 years experience in offering these courses. So we saw it as a good thing to organize this webinar, that is Introduction to M&E. And as we all know, most of us work in NGOs, and we all know the importance of measuring the effectiveness of programs and projects through monitoring and evaluation. So somebody is asking where Capacity Africa is. Capacity Africa is based in Kenya, but we are also partnering with Strategia Netherlands, which is based in the Netherlands. You can check all this information on our website. And my partner colleague is going to tell you more about Strategia Netherlands, and you're going to learn more about the two institutions before the end of this webinar. So at this moment, I'd like to introduce Miss Debbie from Strategia Netherlands. She's going to tell you more about Strategia Netherlands. Debbie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear. So you can take
You're
over.
loud enough.
Thank you very, very much. Greetings, everybody.
Yes.
Strategia Netherlands, as a lot of you know, and welcome to the new participants. We're an international management training organization, and we've partnered with Capacity Africa. We provide capacity building services in development, safety, and security, and in humanitarian interventions. And we're very much a global network. And as you can see, we have people from all over the world. I see Armenia, I see Asia, I see the Caribbean, I see people from everywhere. Thank you so much for joining us today. And our mission is to make development and humanitarian work more effective, obviously through developing and implementing high quality consultancy projects and via training. Training is our big one, and we've got over 200 courses as well. And our online courses are very, very hands-on, and they're offered by a professional cohort. And we have trained well over 400 international organizations or staff of international organizations, UNDP, UNICEF, a lot of NGOs, CBOs, church organizations, and the works. On offer, we have over 200 courses, as you've heard. Diploma courses last for 6 months, certificates for 4 months, and postgraduate diplomas for 12 months. We've got conflict management. Today we hear about monitoring and evaluation, but we've got a lot more courses, and please feel free to go onto our website to see all of our courses. To register, you need to send an inquiry, and we would send you a registration form. Sometimes people get confused. They think that if they go to our website and send an inquiry, that is a registration. No, that is basically just sending an interest. But we will send you a registration form as soon as we get an email from you, or you respond to any of our ads, and you need to complete this in full. Send it back with your CV, your certificates, any academic documents like transcripts, so that we can review it. And we sit with the panel, and we then send you an application outcome. If it's positive, we will send you an admission offer letter with your invoice as well. And once you send your proof of payment, this is assuming you have accepted our offer, We will then complete your registration. You'll get an email from our online resources, and you will be able to get onto the platform and access your courses, and then you're good to go. Just a little bit about our training and learning expectations. On our platform, you have your manuals, your modules, we have reference materials, audios, videos. It really, really is a fantastic what do you call it? It's really, yeah, you get a lot of information, and you've got a lot of reference materials. You can raise queries. This is our courses are very, very much led by your own pace. We have people who finish their postgraduate diplomas in less than 12 months, for example. There are people who go a little bit over. If you experience problems or anything like that, then of course, let us know, keep in touch, let us know, and you have one-to-ones with your moderators as well. We have monthly Zoom sessions, but anything outside of the Zoom sessions, you can always raise a ticket to talk to your moderator. So why is it important to do your training with us? A lot of our students have earned promotions at their workplace. A lot of our students have advanced their careers exponentially. And obviously, I think we all want to not just perform better in the field, but also secure better rewarding job positions. Certificate courses very quickly go for 400 euros. As I said, the duration is 3 months. The diploma courses go for 800 euros and the duration is 6 months. And our postgraduate diplomas, 1,200 euros and the duration is 12 months. I would like to remind you that if you perhaps want to listen to or view a recording of this, webinar or any other webinars that we've had in the past, in the future, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also we get overly subscribed. And in the future, if you're not for some reason able to get onto the platform, you can always watch the webinars live on Facebook. So just a little bit of information there. And if you're interested in our courses, I'm sure you'll be interested in our courses, please send an email, and today you will get a 20% discount if you send an email about any of our courses. Thank you very much. Irene, back to you. Thank you. Hi, Irene.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. I could not unmute myself, but now I can.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and participants, kindly remember to visit our website, that is Strategia Netherlands. Remember, they're offering these courses in partnership with Capacity Africa Institute, and we'll give you a discount we are giving a discount to today's participants, that is a 20% discount. Then I think I'll just tell you, we are going to take a maximum of 2 hours. We are hoping to be done by 2 p.m. So sit still, and our facilitator today is Mr. Stephen Mushami. Stephen is a consultant trainer in M&D, and he has over 15 years experience in training for monitoring and evaluation in different organizations. So at this point, I think we can begin the training. Stephen Mushami, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. I can hear you very well, Irene, and I hope everybody else can be able to hear me very, very well. And yes. I think we can be able to begin. So we be able to look at the topic that we have for discussion today. Very, very exciting topic, just looking at an introduction to monitoring and evaluation, specifically for people who are interested in monitoring and evaluation, that's professionals in this particular sector. I think it's always good to be able to look at this whole area of monitoring and evaluation, and that's what we'll be looking at today. So So thank you so much, Irene, and thank you as well, Debbie, for being able to introduce the organizations that are able to arrange this. As Irene said earlier on, my name is Stephen Muchami, and I'm a trainer at Capacity Africa Institute, and also a consultant as well in monitoring and evaluation as well. So, so I think at this instance, let us be able to begin the session that we have for today. And we've quite a number of agenda items that we want to be able to see if we can manage to review them in the next about an hour to an hour and a half, and just ensure that we can clarify some of these concepts very, very well, and ensure that we are able to clarify that as much as possible. So, so that's basically what we want to be able to look at, and ensure that we are able to have a very sound understanding about this whole aspect of monitoring and evaluation very, very clearly. So, so we just want to be able to look at that and make sure we have a very good understanding simply about this particular area that we want to be able to delve into. So let me just share my screen with all of you so that you can be able to follow me quite clearly. And that's basically what I want to be able to do. So in terms of agenda items for today's session, we are going to be able to look at introduction to M&E terms and concepts. And again, we are also going to look at the difference between monitoring and evaluation, which are simply some very, very critical and fundamental elements to be able to differentiate. So it's always good to make sure that you are able to differentiate between monitoring and evaluation, because we use those terms together, but they fundamentally mean different things altogether. And we will be able to clarify that as well. Then again, also, it's also essential to look at the need for monitoring and evaluation in development projects, which is also something that we will also be highlighting. And again, we'll also look at the process of monitoring in all process of project cycle management. And again, we will also be looking at the types of indicators and ensuring that we are able to identify the different outcome indicators. And again, also, we will also endeavor to look at the monitoring and evaluation framework. And reason why we are doing this is because a lot of people confuse between the monitoring and evaluation framework and the M&E plan. And a lot of people tend to think that these are the same, but that's not always, it's not the case. And it is important that we get to clarify so that we have a very firm understanding between monitoring and evaluation framework and also the M&E plan as well. Then from there on, we will move on and look at the logical framework. And we'll be able to introduce the logical framework because we would also want you to have a very good understanding of what exactly we mean when we're able to refer to the logical framework. Then we will look at writing an effective M&E report, which is also something that we need also to make sure that we are able to clarify. How do you write an effective M&E report as well? And then again, also, we'll also be looking at communication and M&E findings for accountability as expected. So those are some of the things that would ideally want to be able to look at so that at the end of that, then we can be able to have a participants feedback session at the end of that. So I would love to hear your feedback at the end of the session. Be sure that we will be giving you an opportunity to give us your comments, your questions that I will be able to answer at the end of my presentation. So that's basically is a structure of the session as we are planning to have it. As Irene earlier emphasized, make sure we stick to the rules of the session. So make sure you do not unmute when it is unnecessary. Please, let's just observe order or decorum in the meeting, whereas as much as possible so that we can be able to have a very good presentation for this day. So we start with the first thing that we need to be able to look at. And in this first thing, we just want to look at introduction to M&E terms and concepts. So basically be able to look at what are some of the M&E terms and concepts that we definitely basically have. So those are some of the things that we would want to make sure that we are able to clarify as much as possible. So we'll be looking at that so that we can ensure that we are able to have that as much as possible. So that's something that we want to be able to look at. And one of the things that I just want to be able to make sure that we are able to understand is the issue of what is monitoring. So it's good to make sure that we understand what exactly we mean with monitoring, and we will be able to look at that particular aspect of exactly what we mean with monitoring as a concept. And so one of the best definitions we can always give about monitoring is that this is the continual and systematic collection of data to provide information about project progress, because a lot of the times monitoring is so much involved about collection of data, and that collection of data has to be done continuously and has to be done systematically. So we need to be able to do that in a continuous basis and also in a systematic basis, just to make sure that we are able to provide information about the project progress. Secondly, the other thing is to look at what is evaluation as the other thing that we will also need to be able to look at so that we understand exactly what we mean when you talk about evaluation. Evaluation is simply your periodic and your systematic assessment of the project design, of the project implementation, and also project results for the ongoing or completed project. And evaluation basically seeks to be able to answer the evaluation criteria, and more details will actually be able to be clarified in a short while, which I will be able to give you those details when, about what I mean when I talk about evaluation criteria. Now, keywords marked here is that monitoring simply is continuous, and evaluation is periodic. That is, it is performed at certain specific points in time in the project cycle, whereas monitoring happens on a continuous basis, not at predefined time levels in the project cycle. Now, so evaluation seeks to be able to ensure that we can be able to understand the whole concept of the evaluation criteria. And then another thing that also we need to be able to make sure that we are able to understand very well is the concept about monitoring, evaluation, accountability in learning, which is simply a new concept that is also becoming very critical to the success of all projects. So a majority of you may have heard the word meal. A lot of the time people talk about the word meal, and simply this is an expansion of monitoring and evaluation just to include the terms accountability and learning, two critical terms in meal that we are also going to be able to take some time to also ensure that we understand exactly what they actually mean. So we're going to be able to look at that in a very short while. And the other thing that we also need to be able to understand is the fact that meal processes normally help us to be able to strengthen accountability, and again also help us to be able to strengthen learning. And again also they are able to help us promote the project, the program, and the portfolio effectiveness. And that's something that we will always be able to do. So meal processes are very, very helpful in terms of strengthening accountability, in terms of strengthening learning, and also in terms of promoting the project, the program, and the portfolio effectiveness as much as possible. Now, the component that we have added there about accountability in the term meal simply means that accountability is your commitment to transparently respond to the needs of the stakeholders. And stakeholders in a project would include the beneficiaries that are benefiting from the intervention that you're providing, could also be able to include the donors, could also be able to include the partners, and at the same time could also be able to include the project organization regarding the project activities as much as possible. And again, also the other component that we also added there was learning. And learning simply means the need to be able to have processes in place and a culture that enables intentional reflection with the aim of learning so that we can be able to make smarter future decisions. And this concept is very, very critical and learning, because if monitoring and evaluation does not contribute to learning, then I don't know what else could in a project cycle, because monitoring and evaluation specifically helps the people, the project team that is running the project, and also the M&E professionals to make sure they can learn as much as they can from the project. And therefore, it is always important to make sure that there is actually learning. So it basically allows us to have processes in place and also ensure that we have a culture that allows us to be able to have intentional reflection with the aim of learning, so that we can be able to make some of those smarter future decisions. Then the other thing is, as I said earlier on, monitoring and evaluation should always be able to, particularly evaluations, we emphasize this aspect of the DAC evaluation criteria. And the DAC evaluation criteria used to consist of 5 components. Until recently, we got an extra component to be able to emphasize. And earlier on, we used to look at anytime you're conducting an evaluation, you look at relevance. Is the intervention doing things in the right way? And the second aspect was effectiveness. That is the intervention achieving its objectives? And everybody wants to see this project or program that we are running, is it able to achieve the objectives for which it was set for? Then again, also the other important component that is part of the DAC criteria that we also investigate in an evaluation is the component of impact, where we try and look at what difference does this intervention actually make? So is there a difference that this particular intervention is going to make? And again, the other component that also becomes important is the issue of sustainability, where you're looking at these project benefits or program benefits that are coming out of this particular project. Will they be able to last beyond the project period? So sustainability therefore become a very critical component to be able to look at as well. And then again also, the other component that is important also to be able to look at is a component on efficiency, where we will be looking at how well are the resources actually being used. So that's the other thing that we also need to be able to look at, the issue of efficiency. So how are the resources actually being used? And then finally, we will also be able to look at coherence. And when you're looking at coherence, we will be looking at how well does the intervention fit. And it is always good to make sure that we are able to look at the aspect of coherence as much as possible. So coherence is the new criteria that was just added. We never used to look at that before, but now it has become a component that we always want to be able to look at, the aspect of coherence and how the intervention fits within the context that we are actually implementing the project. Now, the other thing that we need also to emphasize as part of some of the introductory aspects, we emphasize the importance of accountability and learning. And one of the things that we want to be able to look so that we can be able to help you as monitoring and evaluation professionals is to be able to understand how projects can be able to embrace accountability. So how do projects embrace accountability? So what do they promote so that they can be able to embrace accountability as expected? So number one of the ways in which projects will be able to embrace accountability is one, by ensuring that they are able to do transparent communications. That is, it is important that they are able to share monitoring and evaluation information and also results with communities, with partners, with donors, and also with other stakeholders as much as possible. And then secondly, it is also important to make sure that they are able to embrace accountability by basically promoting the alignment with standards. And that also becomes very, very important to ensure that we are able also to promote accountability in that particular manner. So demonstrating that the project work has been conducted in compliance with the agreed donor requirements and meal best practices becomes very, very important to be able to achieve. Then thirdly is the issue of responsiveness. That is ensuring that we are able to establish channels through which stakeholders can be able to voice their feedback, also ensure that they are able to voice their ideas, their suggestions, their complaints, and also ensure that they are able to commit to provide an appropriate response on how their inputs are going to inform project decisions. So the issue of responsiveness is one of the ways that we can be able to show that projects are embracing accountability as expected. And then the other thing is also participation, where we need to be able to encourage varying degrees of contributions from different types of stakeholders when we are trying to initiate, when we are trying to define parameters for, and also how to be able to conduct meeting. And in fact, one of the most fundamental ways in which the non-governmental sector is able to provide some of this, is able to show accountability in a clear manner is through the issue of participation. So participation really becomes a very important concept through which we can be able to show, we can be able to embrace accountability, allowing beneficiaries to be able to participate, allowing stakeholders of different cadre to make sure that they are able to participate in the project, and that, when done, is able to embrace accountability. What about learning? The other question that we should actually be able to make sure that we clarify is about how will projects embrace learning. So what are some of the things that they should actually be able to promote so that they are able to embrace learning as expected? So one is, first, it is important that projects and programs incentivize learning. So one of the ways is always to ensure that you encourage your staff, you encourage your team members to make sure that they are able to model and reward learning in an organization, because an organization that learns is an organization that is well able to adapt to the changing situations, particularly nowadays when we are dealing with a lot of changes in the environment, both the business and the physical environment. We realize that it's very, very important to be able to look at how to incentivize learning, because monitoring and evaluation has to be able to incentivize learning. What are we learning about our donors? What are we learning about the fundraising patterns that are there? What are we learning about dealing with beneficiaries, dealing with partners? What are those things that we actually need to be able to learn? Then the other thing is also to ensure that we are able to encourage a spirit of curiosity. So it's also good to make sure that we are able to encourage a spirit of curiosity. That is, we are able to establish a workplace that basically supports the asking of questions, and also curiosity and the challenging of assumptions in the spirit of learning. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to encourage a spirit of curiosity. And thirdly, the other issue is to make sure that we are able to embed learning processes. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to embed learning processes in the project. That means we need to be able to ensure that concrete learning elements, such as the use of checklists to prompt learning and learning questions in meeting agendas, is always something that we can always be able to actively undertake. Then the other thing is also ensuring that we are able to promote adaptive management. So it's also good to make sure that we are able to look at the question of adaptive management. That is, we are able to analyze, we are also able to monitor, and also we are also able to evaluate data promptly and frequently, and actively seek to be able to understand project data, and also use evidence to be able to inform decisions, and also adjustments that actually need to be done to project design, to project planning, and also to project implementation as well. So it's very, very important that we are able to realize how to be able to put that. Then again, also another thing to ensure that learning takes place is by ensuring that we are able to share information as expected. So it's always good to make sure that we look into how to be able to share learning as much as possible. So it's important that we are able to ensure that some of those things are basically put in place. So the next thing that we want also to be able to highlight a little bit is also the issue of monitoring and evaluation results levels, because some of us may be a little bit new to monitoring and evaluation. And so it's important to make sure that we can actually be able to understand some of the monitoring and evaluation results levels that we actually need to be able to look at. So one level is inputs. So we normally start by looking at inputs. That is what resources have been invested in the project or program. For example, technical assistance, computer, mosquito nets, or training is important to be able to look at that. Then secondly, the other thing that we also need to be able to look at is processes and activities. That is the activities or the tasks that are actually carried out to achieve the project or program objectives. So it's important to be able to see that level of results, because once you have the inputs for your project or program, the next thing is to make sure that you are able to undertake your activities so that you can be able to achieve the project or program objectives as expected. Then thirdly is to be able to undertake outputs. That is, what are the immediate results that we will actually be able to achieve at the project or program level through executing project or program activities as well. So outputs really become quite critical to be able to establish. And then again also outcomes. So once you have been able to achieve outputs, then we further move on to outcomes, which are basically short-term results or intermediate results at the population level. So these are felt at the population level, which are basically achieved by the project or program through the execution of the activities that have been executed, as we have actually earlier seen. And then the other one is impact. That is what will be the long-term effects or end results of the project or program. And this will simply be able to refer to the long-term results or end results of the project as expected. So it's important to make sure that we are able to understand those ones as well. And let me just show you an example of simply how we are able to translate each of those result level in monitoring and evaluation. This is how we are able to translate them. When you talk about inputs, we're simply talking about do you have the staff necessary to be able to undertake that intervention? Do you have the space that is necessary? Do you have materials that are necessary? For example, this is a good example of a training. So we'll be talking about a training materials as inputs. Then after that, you will go ahead and conduct your activities. And the activity that was being conducted in this particular project was conducting a training activity for healthcare providers. And once the providers are actually trained in new clinical techniques, then you are able to have what we are referring as outputs that we need to be able to understand. And again, once you have achieved outputs, then the other thing is simply to be able to have some outcomes, which is basically increase in the number of clients that are served by the newly provided trainers. And again, also look at basically the impacts. And when you're talking about the impacts, you will be looking at the declining mobility levels in the target population that is there. So it's important to be able to look at some of those things as we have said. So it's good to be able to look at that.
I think I've lost you.
Okay. So I'm sure you can hear me now. Sorry for that slight pause there. I hope, Irene, am I audible enough? Can you be able to hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes, we
okay,
can hear
okay.
you.
Yes, yes, I can hear
Is the
you.
background noise
Please
minimized
back,
now?
first,
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's
please back
minimized
last slide.
now.
Okay, okay, okay. Okay, so let's look at the next thing that we wanted to look at. We were just looking at the results levels.
He dropped again.
Can you speak again? We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, your microphone
Yes,
was
we can
muted.
hear you still,
We can
but
hear you.
yes, it's fine now.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you, thank you. Then I think we can continue. So just mute so we can continue. I just wanted to confirm that I'm audible enough, and that's what I was just trying to check. So now, the next thing that we want to be able to understand is some of the differences that are there between monitoring and evaluation. And we have already highlighted that by defining monitoring and evaluation. So, so to a good extent, we have actually been able to highlight some of the differences that are there between monitoring and evaluation. And I think that was able to we were able to highlight that in a very in a very clear way, and that's something that we will still also summarize that the difference between monitoring and evaluation. So we say monitoring is continuous, whereas evaluation is periodic. Then again, another thing that we need to also note about monitoring is that it focuses on activities and outputs. Some of those results levels that I've just defined. So monitoring will just be concerned with the first two. That's the inputs, the activities and outputs as well. Then evaluation will definitely be concerned about the outcomes and impacts. That's the short-term results and the long-term results. And it is important for us to be able to know that. Then again, also monitoring will also be able to focus on comparing what is being delivered against what was actually planned. So that's something that monitoring will actually be able to compare. And then again, also evaluation will be able to focus on the project achievements, that is the positive and negative, intended or unintended recommendations and lessons learned as much as possible. And then again, also monitoring is usually done internally, whereas evaluation is usually done externally by an independent outsider as much as possible. So it's important to make sure that we know some of those differences that exist between monitoring and evaluation. So it's always good to be able to understand that. Now, having said that, then now you understand why we actually need monitoring and evaluation in development projects and also in humanitarian projects. And most of you now will be able to understand why it becomes critical. So let me just hear some of you, just two of you or three of you, just highlighting now, having introduced what monitoring and evaluation is, what do you think simply we have a need for monitoring and evaluation as necessary? So let me be able to hear one or two people just be able to justify why we actually need monitoring and evaluation in development projects. So I can see somebody who's raised their hand here. This is Adam Elian. Adam Elian, are you able to give us your answer on that? I hope you wanted to share your I hope you wanted to share your your answer on that specific question that I'm asking. So Adam, Eliana, are you there? Okay, I think we can hear you. So let me check with Bakari Juawara. Bakari Juwara.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Bakari. So can you tell us, why do you think we need M&E in development projects?
Yeah, firstly,
or meal for that matter?
Yeah, as you said, firstly, my name is Bakari Juara. I am from the Gambia, commonly known as the Smiling Coast of Africa. So in response to your question, based on your presentation and my experience in monitoring evaluation, I think the need for M&E in development projects, it is one of the most important things. It helps you in reprogramming, because once you do monitoring and evaluation, you'll be able to identify some of the gaps that may not be in line with how the project was designed. So as a result of the outcome of your M&E, it could help you to reprogram your activities in order to attain what have been desired. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And thank you, Bakari, for that, because yeah, it's true. We are supposed to be able to identify what are some of the gaps that were there in terms of the implementation of the project. And if we don't do something like an evaluation, which is part of monitoring and evaluation, then we will not be able to solely identify what are some of the gaps that are actually there. So it's always good to make sure that we can actually be able to identify that. Then I think also we can hear from Francis Uwasoba, Uwamsomba. So I hope I pronounced your name well. You can see your hand is raised as well. What is the need for monitoring and evaluation as well? Your microphone is not unmuted, Francis Uwasomba. I think your microphone is not yet unmuted, and that is why we can't hear you. Alternatively, I can also be able to hear from Beatrice Ogaebe.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Yeah, good morning.
Nice
and good afternoon to Sam, and also good night to Sam. I think we have a global a global list of participants here. So so to some it might be afternoon, to some it might be good night, to some it might be good morning. So it's fine.
Okay.
Just continue.
Greetings all. My name is Beatrice, speaking from Nigeria. I think the need for M&E in development projects cannot be overemphasized. Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. The progress we make in our programs.
Yeah, so yeah, continue.
Okay, be it continuously or periodically, but the aim, as the overall aim, is to make sure that our programs are in line with our objective, with our outcomes, with the designs, because for every program, there is a way it should go. There are audience it should target, there are achievements it all our project is to make sure that all these things I've called are met, is optimized. Thank you. Over.
Yeah, true. And I think that's very, very true, because we need to make sure that we are able to clearly identify the progress that the project is actually making. And that becomes very, very important to be able to realize that. And that's something that we actually want to be able to ensure that we can always be able to determine. So that's very, very true. And it's good to be able to realize that particular objective as well. So I can see someone else here who wants to give a thought. Let me give Jeffrey Nelson and also Shima Nyaunde, maybe just to also give their thoughts around the same. So let's start with Jeffrey Nelson.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So my name is Geoffrey Nelson. I'm with Management Systems International, working here in Kenya. I think one of the reasons why we would want to need to do monitoring and evaluation in our project is simply to also track if, say, the resources that we have are being used properly, right? The idea of just doing monitoring evaluation, I think overall, is to find out if our project, its objectives, has already been articulated by the two people who have already spoken. But then there's this element of just us trying to see whether or not our resources are also being used properly. So I think that is also one of the reasons why we should do monitoring evaluation. Over.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. And I think that's well and clearly put. I cannot be able to underemphasize or overemphasize, but that was clearly put, the importance of ensuring that we account for the resources that we have actually used. Let's also hear Shima Nyaunde. Are you able to unmute Shima Nyaunde?
Yeah, hello.
You can be able to give a need for M&E in development projects. Shima, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I think we have some challenge on that end from Shima. Shima, I think I will come back to you later on. Let's just be able to continue as we move on and sure that there will be some stability later on when we are conversing. I think it's just some internet fluctuation on your end. So let's just continue and simply summarize. As I said, just mute your microphone. Shima, I'll come back to you later on because I think there's some internet fluctuation on your end. And so I'll be coming back to you later on. So some of the things that we need to make sure that we are able to understand is that as most of you have been able to emphasize, it provides ways of systematically measuring and assessing program activities and results so that we can be able to check on the progress of the implementation and the results systematically as expected. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to measure and assess the program activities. And that's one of the things that monitoring and evaluation will help us in. Again, also, it helps determine when a program is going to plan and also when the changes will actually be needed. And so it is important to make sure that we are able to determine when the program is going to be planned and when the changes actually will be needed. Again, also, it also forms the basis for modification of interventions and also ensuring that we are able to assess the quality of any project activities that are being conducted. And so it's important to make sure that we are able to have a basis for modification of interventions and also assessing the quality of the project activities that will actually be conducted. Again, also, it provides for the necessary data to guide planning and also to make sure that we are able to allocate resources, to make sure that we are able to design, and also to make sure that we are able to implement projects and programs, and if necessary, to also reallocate the resources in better ways, in different ways. And again, also, it is also able to provide planners, implementers, and policymakers and donors with information and understanding that they actually need to make informed decisions about the operations of the programs and projects. And I think you know that the donors really insist on ensuring that we are able to have a very good, they're able to follow up on monitoring and evaluation because it gives them a lot of information on whether they will actually be able to fund those programs in the future as well. So it's good to be able to understand that as much as possible. Now, the other thing that is also good to emphasize is also to be able to emphasize the whole importance of monitoring in the process of project cycle. I think now we have been able to clarify monitoring and evaluation very clearly, and it is important to make sure that we understand the critical role that monitoring, because if there was no monitoring, then there will not be evaluation. So it's important to make sure that we always have monitoring, because if there's no monitoring, then there will not be any evaluation of any kind whatsoever. So it's always good to make sure that we highlight that process of monitoring. So monitoring is an important part in the project cycle, and project monitoring basically is able to help us monitor three crucial things. And one of the things that we always are able to establish is whether are we implementing the project as planned. That's something that's very important. And then again, also, it helps us be able to understand whether we are achieving the planned results. That is, it is important for us to be able to know, is this project really achieving the results that were actually planned as much as possible. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to understand some of those things and ensure that we can actually be able to understand whether the project is achieving the results that are expected. And that really also becomes very important to make sure that we can also be able to understand as much as possible. And then again, also, do we need to be able to undertake certain adjustments in the project? It is also something that we get to understand in the project as well. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to understand some of those adjustments that actually need to be made in the project. And so monitoring basically occurs in two major levels. So it's important to make sure that we undertake monitoring in two major levels. That is, it is important for us to be able to undertake results monitoring, and results monitoring basically focuses on outputs, outcomes and impact. So it's something that we can actually be able to achieve. And then again, also, the other thing is implementation monitoring that basically focuses on inputs, activities, and outputs as well. So those are the two critical things that we basically need to be able to understand. That is results monitoring and also implementation monitoring as much as possible. So when you look at the two aspects, you realize that implementation monitoring, therefore, you concern yourself on checking the inputs, checking the activities, and checking the outputs. Whereas when you look at results monitoring, you're simply looking at the outputs, you're also looking at the outcomes, and also you're also looking at the impact as expected. So it's always good to make sure that you can actually be able to understand implementation monitoring and results monitoring, which is something that you need also to be able to look at. Then In addition to results monitoring and implementation monitoring, of course, we also do situation monitoring, just looking at the contextual issues where we are implementing the project so that we can be able to understand what is exactly happening in where we are implementing the project. Now, the next thing that we also wanted to be able to understand is just understand indicators, because a lot of the times people are not able to tell exactly what are indicators, and it's always good to make sure that we understand the types of indicators that we actually need to be able to use, and also be able to identify the outcome indicators as well. And an indicator is sufficiently defined as a variable whose value is able to change, and it measures some key aspects or key elements of a program or a project, such as activities, outputs, outcomes, and impacts. And these are some of the things that we need to be able to understand about variables. And the purpose of indicators typically is to be able to show us whether the program or project aspects or elements were basically carried out as planned. And then again, also to make sure that we can show if a program or a project was basically able to cause a change or a difference. And that's something that we basically need to be able to understand. And then it is important also to make sure that we also understand that an M&E indicator is reasonably expected to be able to vary. So it's always good to make sure that an M&E indicator is reasonably expected to be able to vary, because we basically use it to be able to measure certain aspects and elements of a program or a project, such as outputs, outcomes, and impacts. And so the value of an indicator will basically be able to change from a given certain baseline to another value that is at the project or program end, when the indicator will actually be measured or calculated again. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to understand the whole importance of an indicator as much as possible, so that we are able to measure the change from the baseline level to another level, where the indicator can actually be measured or calculated again. So it's always good to be able to see that. Now, the critical thing is, are you able to identify the outcome indicators? Are you able to be in a position where you can be able to identify the outcome indicators? That is the types of indicators, that is a type of an indicator that we are able to refer to as an outcome indicator. So a project or a program manager will always ensure that they lean towards understanding M&E indicators, and the first one of the critical things that as a project staff you need to be able to grasp is the fundamental difference between process and results indicators, because those are the two main indicators that you'll actually be dealing with in a project, and it's always good to make sure that you can sufficiently be able to tell the difference between the two, and it is important that we are able to tell the difference between the process and the result indicators. Now, what do we mean when you talk about process indicators? Now, these indicators that we are also referring as process indicators can also be referred to as output indicators, because they simply focus on monitoring just the number and the type of activities that have actually been carried out in the project. So they basically look at what are some of these activities that was basically undertaken in the project, and what are the immediate outputs of some of these activities, and that's what we normally refer to as process indicators. And it's normally very, very important to make sure that we are able to identify the process indicators as expected. And good examples that we can actually mention under outcome and process indicators is like, for instance, you can consider the number and the types of services provided. Secondly, you can also be able to look at the number of people that have actually been trained. That is also something that you can also be able to look at. What is the number of people that have actually been trained? What is the number of people? Or what is the type of services that have actually been provided, or the number of people that have actually been trained? And also, what is the number of materials that have actually been produced and disseminated, or the type of materials that have actually been produced and disseminated? For instance, if there was some activities to be able to produce certain materials and certain outputs at the end of the day. So you can be able to look at what type of materials were produced, and also what is the number and the type of those materials that were produced and disseminated. Then also the number and percentage of female clients that were screened is also a good example of another process indicator that you can be able to look at as well. Then again, also, it is also important to be able to look at the results indicators. So results indicators is also something that you also might need also to be able to look at. So result indicators, basically, these ones are used to evaluate whether or not the activity has actually been achieved for the intended objectives or results. And good examples that you can be able to find here is, like, for instance, what indicators of knowledge, attitudes, and practices would actually be there in a particular survey, and also perceptions of survivors about the quality and the benefits of services that were provided by an organization or an institution, as measured in individual interviews as well. Then again, also, we have also the difference between outcome indicators and also impact indicators. And when we look at, of course, results indicators can be sub-classified into either outcome and impact, because remember, there are two main types of long-term results that we can actually be able to have based on the results levels that we actually looked at earlier on. We spoke of outcome indicators and also impact indicators as well. And so those are the two subtypes that we can find under result indicators. And it is important that we are able to also understand the difference between the two. So outcome indicators basically relates to the change that actually needs to be demonstrated as a result of the program interventions in the medium to the longer term, whereas impact basically looks at the long-term effects of the program or project interventions. And a good example there will be the prevalence of violence against women and girls in a certain community X. And so that basically simply summarizes the whole aspect of the different types of indicators, and really getting down into outcome indicators that are very, very critical to be able to define in your monitoring and evaluation exercises or activities that you will actually be able to conduct. Now, the other thing that we need also to highlight now is monitoring and evaluation framework, and also the monitoring and evaluation plan. And just before I highlight the monitoring and evaluation framework, I just want to see some of you who have just a basic concept of what this is all about. So again, I want to be able to see somebody who has some fair understanding, just some brief understanding about what you think an M&E framework is, because it's a very critical tool in monitoring and evaluation, and it's always good to make sure that we are able to utilize that tool as much as possible, because it's very, very critical to be able to understand it as much as possible. So let me see somebody who has an idea around that. I can see a hand here raised from Wubet Takele. So Wubet Takele, you can give us that, and then we can also hear Florence Gidinji.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Give us some.
I'm sorry.
Some idea about that. Wubet Takele.
I'm sorry. You can proceed. It was not raised to.
Okay. You raised by mistake.
Mistakenly,
Not a problem. Not a problem.
I just doubt.
Okay. Not a problem. So do you have an idea of what M&E framework is, Wubet Takele? Okay, so now we can hear Wubet Takele, and that's fine. Now, what about Florence? Florence Gidinji, do you have any idea about what an M&E framework is? Maybe you can try to just expound a bit.
Okay, thank you very much, and greetings to all of us. I think the M&E logical framework is a snapshot of a project that shows the summary of the project. So it gives a brief description of the project, and it has key elements like the specific objective, the overall objective first, then the specific objectives, then it has the project outcomes, then the outputs, and also it details the inputs needed to execute the project. And of course, it gives the overriding assumptions that are often external that affect the implementation of the project. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Florence. Do you work in monitoring and evaluation?
Not as of now.
Oh, not as of now, yeah, because I think that was also very, very clear, because what you ideally went into, you went into one of the subtypes of an M&E framework that we call the logical framework. So it's just one of the subtypes of an M&E framework, but you were able to highlight some of the key components of a logical framework, and that was quite very, very clear, and that's the reason I was saying this must be somebody who has experience working with a logical framework, which is a very, very critical tool. We'll be getting into it just to highlight some key things about the logical framework later on. But I think also we be able to hear from I can see there is also Joseph Ame. Your hand is raised up. I don't know whether you wanted to give us an idea as well in terms of your understanding for the M&E framework.
Good morning, all.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, and good night to some.
I'm Ahmed Joseph from Nigeria. Well, I raised up my hand not to actually give an idea on the M&E framework, actually, but it was from the first presentation that you gave. But since we are talking about M&E framework now, I guess I will just key into what the last speaker said. An M&E framework is more like a snapshot of the project, what the project aims to actually do, and how it aims to do that, what it wants to achieve, and some of the key persons responsible for actually achieving that, and some underlying assumptions
okay,
to achieving the results or not achieving the results or targets as per se.
Okay, yeah. So frameworks are important in that manner, as Joseph may say, but they're able to give us simply a good framework of ensuring that we can target to achieve the results, or actually be able to look at whether we will achieve the results or we will not be able to achieve the results. So frameworks are very, very critical in that, and it is good to be able to emphasize that as much as possible, and it's good to be able to understand that. So frameworks are simply an element of an M&E plan, and that's why for some of us who normally confuse in between the two, some of us who cannot be able to tell the difference between or people who consider M&E frameworks to be the same as M&E plans, I think you need to be able to understand this, that an M&E framework is a component of the M&E plan. So they can't be the same thing. One is an element of the other that basically are able to depict the project components and the sequence of steps that will actually be taken to basically achieve the desired project results. And they are very, very helpful in increasing the understanding of the project and the program goals and objectives. So they are very, very important in that. And they are also able to delineate the internal and the external elements that could actually affect the project or program's success. So they are very, very important in that. And again, also they are crucial for understanding and analyzing how a project or a program is supposed to work. So they are very, very important in that. And again, also, there are also models, there are also tables, pictures, and maps that basically helps visualize factors that drive an intervention, because sometimes being able to create an M&E framework, the best way to present it is in the form of a model or a table, like the way we do for the logical framework. When anytime you're putting down the logical framework, you present it as a tabular format. So basically that's how they are presented, so that they can visualize the factors that drive an intervention, as well as illustrate how a project should be able to work. And there are several types of M&E frameworks. So one is what we call a conceptual framework. Most of the times, this one is used in research. So people who do research basically come up with conceptual framework. Again, also there is results framework, and this is commonly utilized by monitoring and evaluation personnel, just to be able to have a way to document your results and how they will actually be achieved. And also it comes in the form of a table. I think I should be able to have an example of a results framework here that I will show you. And then lastly, we have the last subtype there, which is the logical framework that earlier on Florence was able to highlight, which is also another critical typology of an M&E framework that is available there. And we'll be looking at the details of this in a short while. I will also be able to take you through that. But when you talk about M&E framework, a results framework, this is a good example of one. As I told you earlier, is a table that simply will be able to show you the results of the project, define the indicators, show the baseline and the target, the data sources, the frequency, who will be responsible, and who will be reporting. So this is a very good example of a results framework as expected. So it's good to be able to see that. And we'll be putting this diagram as well in your notes, so that you can be able to have it as well. Now, let's further move on to the M&E plan. So the M&E plan is also another critical aspect that we also need to be able to consider. And an M&E plan is simply a document that basically describes, and so the M&E plan basically describes the strategic information your project or program basically wants to be able to gather and use for decision making that will basically be able to lead to the project or program improvement as expected. So basically that's is able to describe some of the strategic information that you actually require to be able to drive project or program improvement as expected. So it's very, very important to be able to consider that. So it's a fundamental document that basically highlights a number of things in a project or program, and it basically helps to be able to hold the project or program staff accountable in terms of telling whether the project will succeed or not succeed as expected. So it's always good to make sure that we are able to have that. And so it's able to describe in detail what, the how, and the when of a project or program monitoring and evaluation. And it's a primary tool for monitoring and evaluation. And in as much as it can actually be able to very informative, it should be able to address a number of things. And how will the indicators be defined? The category of the roles that will be responsible for monitoring and evaluation activities. When will the monitoring and evaluation activities actually take place? And how will the data be analyzed? Which is also a critical thing to be able to tell. And also, how will the data be used as expected? So those are some of the things that you actually need to be able to understand about the M&E plan as expected. Now, the other thing, as we say, it is also good to pay attention to the logical framework. So it's also good to make sure that we are able to pay attention to the logical framework. And the log frame is often presented in a matrix format, and it is important for us to make sure that we are able to understand that. And it's normally able to display the project design logic, that is statement of the inputs, activities, outputs, outcome, and impact. And again, also helps us also to document the indicators, and some people also call them targets that will be used to measure the progress. And then again, also it is also essential in identifying the data sources or the means of verifying progress. So it's also good to identify the data sources or the means of verifying progress as expected. And again, also, it helps us assess risks or assumptions about external factors beyond the project manager's control that may actually affect the achievement of results as well. So, so they are very, very useful in also assessing risks and assumptions about the external factors beyond the project manager's control that will actually affect the achievement of the results as expected. And so it is used, therefore, for planning, for approving, for evaluating, and for monitoring the projects as expected. So it's very, very important in that. And it is a powerful and a useful technique, and it richly deserves much wider application than just in international development alone. So it's a very powerful and useful technique, and it actually deserves more wider application than just in international development alone. And basically, the log frame matrix includes some of these critical components that we actually need to be sure that we are able to understand. So you will basically populate the goal or impact. That is, you're looking at why are we doing this? That is what is those long-term vision of doing this or being able to realize this. Then outcomes, we'll be looking at what results, and we say these outcomes are basically short-term to intermediate results. Then again, outputs, what are the immediate deliverables that we actually need to achieve after the conclusion of the activities. And then activities is what are we going to be able to do to deliver the outputs. Then of course, you have, you also indicate the indicators of achievement. That is, how are we going to know that we have been successful? So we need to be able to indicate the indicators of achievement. Then again also, okay, so so again also it is important also to look at the means of verification. That is, how are we going to check our reported results, and also how are we going to ensure that the risks and assumptions that basically underlie the structure of the project, what risk, if they are not going to prevail, is also something that we need to be able to look at. And there's a good example that we are going to put in the notes for you to be able to see how to be able to populate a logical framework. But I think we have been able to mention some of the key components and what actually needs to go where. And as you can see, it's a 4x4 matrix that simply has the activities, the outputs, outcomes, goals. And again, also, it also includes, it actually includes the means, as the indicators, the means of verifications, and also the risks and assumptions that you actually need to be able to indicate. Then I've also added an extra table there for you, because a couple of times you will not find a lot of organizations using the standard terminology for the results levels. And different organizations, be it Australian Aid or CARE or European Union, Food and Agriculture Organization, NORAD, USAID, World Bank, World Vision, they'll have different terminologies that are used in their logical frameworks. So don't let the terminologies confuse you, but basically there will always be 4 levels of results. That's the activities, outputs, outcomes, and impacts, but terminologies can always differ as you deal with different organizations. Now, the other thing that I just want to be able to emphasize is, how do you write an effective M&E report? What are some of the key elements that you should be able to focus on? Because M&E is not M&E without M&E reports and reporting. So it's important to know some of the things that we actually need to be able to be concerned about when you look at writing effective M&E reports. So I'll focus on 3 key elements, that is results and analysis, and also the organization contribution to these results. So you are expected to make sure that you're able to report on results. And this part basically consists of a description of the results that have actually been achieved ideally, with reference to the current status of the intervention indicators as much as possible. And it basically shows the status of the indicators and whether this has been able to change from the baseline. So it's always good to be able to show the status of some of these indicators. And again, also the other thing is, you do not just report on the results that have actually been achieved in the project or program, but it's also important to make sure that you're able to analyze those report results as much as possible. And that's why the component on analysis of the results is very, very important, so that you're able to describe the results and improvements in the indicators, how they were achieved by the main implementing partners that were involved in the project. And then again, also, the analysis section should also describe the shortfalls and the difficulties encountered, the lessons that you learned, and how these have been applied. And also is a key component of the report, bringing the report bringing together the data so that you can be able to create a good story that donors can be able to appreciate about the project and also the achievement to the reader. Then another thing that is always important and is the basis of particularly today's evaluations is to ensure that now it is easy to present the results, but can you be able to show how the organization was able to contribute to these results? And that becomes another critical element of reporting. And this basically describes the actions of an organization which have been able to contribute to the achievement of the results. And remember, sometimes most organizations can only be able to show contribution, but they are not able to show attribution. Remember, there's a difference between contribution and attribution, because attribution is where specifically you are able to say that these results were only achieved by the efforts of the organization. But when you talk about contribution, you're saying that we could have contributed to these results, and because we were multiple partners, so we actually contribute to the achievement of the results, and probably we are not able to show the attribution of the results as expected. So it's always good to make sure that you are able to understand that. Then again, when you're reporting, please understand the report recipient needs. Please understand who will be able to receive the report, so that you can understand what exactly they actually want, and ensure you be able to have that information. And then lastly, it is important to follow reporting instructions. And when we are saying this, we are making reference to the donor, because a lot of the times you will actually be able to report to the donor. And it is important that you are able to show the donor that you have been able to follow their guidelines on how reports are supposed to be done. In fact, in most cases, when an evaluation will be done, there will always be emphasis about the structure of the report. So the report has to be done in a certain format. And ideally, most reports will have this kind of formats. So you need to have an executive summary. You need to make sure that you have an introduction, so that you mention the purpose and the background of the report, and then the methodology, how the evaluation was conducted, the findings, then the conclusions. And the conclusions need to tie back to your research questions, and then or evaluation questions, and then recommendations. That is, you're able to present evidence to support your recommendations as expected. Then finally, I think the other important aspect is using M&E to communicate findings, so that we can be able to have action and accountability. And I just want to focus on one of the things that can help you to make sure that you are able to communicate your findings for action and accountability. And this is what we call having a meal communication plan. Is very, very important to make sure that you are able to always have a meal communication plan. And the contents of the meal communication plan normally includes, so you will be able to identify who are your target stakeholders, who needs to be able to receive your meal communications. And of course, you will be indicating the different stakeholders for your project who actually have different information needs than yourself, and have different communication preferences. And you need to make sure that you are able to communicate to them. And it's always good to make sure that you can be able to indicate. Yeah, so sorry, I think I got muted, and I was unable to unmute. So that's the reason. So we were saying that it is important to make sure that you identify your target stakeholders. Very, very critical. Then again, also determine what information needs do your target stakeholders want, so that even as you structure your M&E reports, you will make sure that you're able to include that information that they actually want based on the information needs of your stakeholders. Then the other thing is looking at the communication methods that you can actually be able to use. Will also be very, very important to identify how you're going to communicate with them. And communication methods should also be able to help you understand literacy levels of your stakeholders, and also how broad the audience is that you're trying to reach. Will also inform your communication methods as well. And then also the timing and the frequency. That is this the right timing and frequency to make sure that we are able to communicate effectively as much as possible. So all communications should always be planned in accordance with the overall implementation team and calendar. And it's always good to make sure that we are able to look at the timing and the frequency as much as possible. And again, also the M&E communication plan. And the M&E communication plan basically looks at the whole. So it's a simple table, just with the 4 components that we mentioned. So one column of the table, you indicate your target stakeholders. Then on the other column, you indicate your information needs, and then your communication methods and your timing and frequency. And as you can see in this particular project, because this is just a sample example from one of the projects that I was involved in, you can see we're able to list the donor, we're able to list the regional technical office, Ministry of Health, the project team and implementing partners, the IDPs and the host community members. And you're able to list what information needs they have, and also the communication methods that you actually want to be able to use, and also the timing and the frequency that you would actually want to be able to communicate to them as much as possible. And so basically that brings it to the end, simply what we wanted to look at. And those are the agenda items that we actually wanted to be able to look at. And I'm sure you have been able to follow very well that particular session. So now we want to come to the other section, which is get your feedback, get your questions answered, and also any comments on how you have been able to appreciate the session. That will be very, very good to be able to get into that session. So that's basically what we will do now. And let's basically look at some of the comments that we want to be able to pick from you on how you have been able to appreciate the session. And also if you have any questions, so you can raise your hand and I will be able to see you, and I will be able to ask you to be able to present that. So let me start here with Abdul Rahman. So we have Abdul Rahman. So Abdul Rahman, you can go ahead and make your comment or question. You can unmute yourself. Abdul Rahman. I think Abdul Rahman is not able to unmute.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Yeah, you can continue.
Yeah. I'm Abdul Rahman from Bangladesh. I am a development worker and working on M&E. My question is, I have given it in chat box that in a logical framework approach, if between outcome and output, what is our control and what is our influence? That is my question.
Okay. Yeah. So when you look at outcomes and impacts, sometimes we always say that we will not be able to influence those higher level results that are dependent on the population based on the intervention that you have actually been able to give. And so we always say that you cannot be able to influence those results. And the best is just to be able to define indicators to be able to measure them. but you cannot be able to influence that. What we can actually be able to influence is at the level of activities and outputs, because this is where we are actually implementing the activities of the intervention, and so we will have a lot of influence. And basically, what we actually do at this level when we are implementing the activities and getting the outputs is basically what will determine whether the outcomes and the impacts will actually be achieved. And so, so the influence can only be at the activity output level, but outcome impact level, these are things that are inherent on the beneficiaries that we are giving these interventions, and it's only them that can actually determine these results as expected. So thank you, Abdul, and I hope I have been clear to your question, and maybe we can also be able to hear from Mohammed Haji as well. Mohammed Haji, you also had a question as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Presenter. Hello, everyone. I'm Mohammed Haji from Mogadishu, Somalia. Thank you, and it was really a very fantastic presentation. And I have two questions. The first question is, how can we get the presentation that you have made today? And the second question is, since if there's an M&E and there's a report, can we have a sample report of an M&E? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, and good to be able to hear that from you. And so Mohammed Haji, just to respond, so the presentation that we have looked at this point, we will be able to share that with all the participants for today's session. So as long as you participated in today's sessions, you are going to be able to receive that. Then secondly, is the question that you're asking about a sample M&E report. Yes, that one we can be able to share. And I think even different types of reports that we have, particularly if you can be able to join our course in M&E, we are able to explore the aspect of reporting more. So I would rather, if you can be able to sign up for our courses, just to be able to see even how we identify poor reports and good quality reports, which is something that we explore in detail as much as possible. So I think I've been able to respond to you quite well. So I think let me go to the next person here who was a question. This is Luke Mayet. I can see Luke Mayet.
Yes, Stephen, thank you very much. And I am Luke Mayet from Congo Brazzaville, and have just have some of have like questions. You've been talking about conceptual framework. What is the difference between conceptual framework and the model conceptual, if we have one? But also, I'd like to have just one of the colleague here said the recording, because we're just recording this video here. I mean this course, and I would like to have this recording, but also the presentation. Also, I just want to know, how can I sign up for your courses? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so look, Mayet, I've been able to hear your three questions. So one of the things is that the recording will actually be sent to you. So no worry about that. The recording will actually be sent because we already have your emails for those who have been able to participate. So that will be shared with you. Then I think, as Debbie mentioned earlier on, you can always be able to follow our YouTube page, because we are able to post some of these recordings there. So you can always be able to find that there. And then again, in terms of being able to sign up for our courses, I think you can always be able to write an email. And I think those are details we will be giving you in the chat section. And you will be able to have that as well. So you can be able to register for the course. Let me just look at the aspect of a conceptual framework and the model concept. And one of the things is that when you talk about a conceptual framework, we say these are frameworks that we normally use to be able to showcase either the results in M&E or showcase the concepts that we have for certain variables of interest that we want to be able to look at. And particularly this conceptual framework basically looks at that. So there's no much difference between the conceptual framework and the model concept that you mentioned. And I think is basically just trying to conceptualize certain critical components that you probably want to evaluate or you want to consider as critical variables for a study that you want to do. And that's basically what we are able to do when you talk about a conceptual framework. So it's one of the M&E frameworks that we have, and that is why we were able to highlight it and say it's normally used a lot in research work or studies. Anytime you are organizing a study and you want to be able to show your conceptual model, you can still be able to use the conceptual framework. So I think I've been clear on that. And details will be coming later on how you can be able to sign up. And I think there should be some information in your chat section, but I will still be asking Irene or my colleagues who are also here to finalize as they emphasize that so that you can get those details clearly. Let me pick 2 more questions. Just before I hand over the meeting, let me see if I can be able to pick up some few more questions here. And let me see if we can be able to hear from Foza Michel, and also if we can be able to hear from Shima Nyaunde. Let me see if we have time to be able to hear some comments or questions from them. So we can start with Foza Michel.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we are hearing you very well.
Okay, so mine was not a question much, like it was not a question so far. It was just a comment. So let me say Thanksgiving for that nice presentation. It was enjoyable. Okay, I'm a graduate. Sorry to say I'm a graduate. Okay, I'm from Kenya. A graduate, though I don't have a job yet, but I happen to take this as a unit, one of my units in campus back in the university. So it was just a refreshment for me, and I think I really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you, and continue with the same work. God bless you all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so thank you. That's Michelle, just appreciating the session. And of course, I can always attest to that fact that, of course, what we are able to learn back in the universities on monitoring and evaluation sometimes is fundamentally a little bit different from what we find in the practice of M&E, and that's what we were trying to highlight. And that's why some of these sessions are critical, that you are able to participate in and also even sign up for some of the professional courses that we offer on monitoring and evaluation to make sure you keep yourself up to date with monitoring and evaluation developments as they are happening. So, so thank you, Foza Michel, for appreciating our work, and we look forward to have a lot of engagement with you in our institution as well. So next is I think I had mentioned Shima Nyaunde. Shima Nyaunde, are you available now? I think I had tried to look out for you earlier on. I was not able to find you. So you can go ahead and make your comment or question as well.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. Apologies for not being able to connect earlier. I'm joining from Harare in Zimbabwe. And I just want to, mine is not a question. I'm actually just going to appreciate the way you package the training. I'm also an evaluation specialist here in Zimbabwe, and I really appreciated how you put the basics together. I mean, for any person who's trying to sort of get into M&E, this is actually what might be needed for people to actually get acquainted in M&E. And another comment would also be to say, probably you could also smuggle issues to do with the theory of change just after where you spoke of the logical frameworks, so that at least people would sort of understand, you know, the logical sequence in terms of how strategies could actually be defined in a theory of change after when they appreciate the logical sequencing of activities, the inputs into activities, the outputs, the outcomes, and then the impact. But otherwise, I think this is a great course for people to build up on, and it has been a great refreshment also as a trainer. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shima Nyaunde. I think we have heard you very, very, very clearly this time round, and thank you for appreciating the work as well. And I think it's good you mentioned that. And I think when I was presenting the logical framework, I told myself I should have inserted something here on the theory of change, and it's good you mentioned that. But I think you can be sure I will be putting that input in the next session that we'll be having in. But of course, it's something we cover adequately in the programs that we offer. So sorry, I think I just had that oversight that I was not able to add a component on that. But of course, it will be there next time when we look at this again. So thank you as well for that. And maybe just to ask my colleagues, Irene, can we be able to take more questions, or we are badly on time?
Hello, Stephen.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we are badly on time, but you can take maybe 2 more questions and then we wind up.
Okay. Thank you, Irene, for that extra time. So we can take some 2 more questions, and I think I don't know how to select here because I think I have a lot of the hands raised. But what I will say is that in case we don't still accommodate you in this session, I think you can still write to us that question if it's a very burning question in the chat section. Somebody is trying to pick those questions, and we can still be able to answer them and as we send the materials as well. Or you can just mail us directly with your question. We will be able to still answer it, and that's something that we can guarantee you. We always want to make sure that all your questions and comments are captured as much as possible. So let me just go a little bit far off, and maybe just hear from Kilgale, Nepal, and just be able to hear what comment or question is there from Kilgale.
Thank you, Stephen. It's me, Kilgale. I'm from Nepal, and Nepal is the country of Mount Everest, and also we say country of Lord Gautam Buddha. First of all, thank you very much, Stephen. It's very clear and beautiful. Thank you for your presentation. I have only one question. Though I am not the staff and I am not working in many sections, but I do oversee the overall project management. I do have one question that is about the DAC criteria. In fact, what I learned is there are 5 DAC criteria for evaluation, but today you presented one more criteria, that is coherence. So I mean, is it the newly added additional criteria, or I missed in my previous study and training? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that good question, and it's good to ask that, because we basically just it was not left out when you were studying, so I need to confirm that it was just recently added, and so that's why we have a sixth criteria, and it is important that we basically understand that when we do evaluations, we are also expected to also use that sixth criteria, which we presented as coherence, and it's something that is becoming important to make sure that we are able to look at that as well. So it's not a new one. I mean, it's not. It was not there before, but we basically needed to. It's something that was recently added, and it is important that we are able to have that as much as possible in our evaluations. And then again, let me just pick a last comment here or question, as I was given that time by Irene. Prudence. Prudence, can you make your comment and or your question very briefly, because I'm so much pressed on time. Prudence, you had raised your hand. Your microphone seems to be on, but seems like we can't hear you. And I'm just going to ask then, can we have Lamson Osira?
Yes. Thank you very much, Stephen. A couple of weeks ago, I was having, maybe I can introduce myself as well. I work as a monitoring and evaluation advisor for GIZ in Uganda. So a couple of weeks ago, I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues, and we were talking about the difference between outputs and outcomes. And he brought in a very valid argument that there are certain types of activities that actually leads to outcome. At the same time, it's producing output. For example, let's say a training that is aimed at sensitizing somebody to have a change in knowledge, attitude, and of course, practice takes a little bit of time, as you need to actually prepare for an evaluation or for an assessment to actually gauge the level of change in practice. What is your take? Are there certain, is that a true reflection of what can happen? Is it always logical that it should flow from output to outcome, or any change in knowledge and attitude is already an outcome? Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of the immediacy of results, is something that can always be able to change from intervention to intervention. The only thing that we say is that the results levels always have a systematic way of actually being felt. And that is why we have been implying that you have to move from outputs to impacts. But then again, looking at the impact, looking at the intervention that you're trying to put in place, the immediacy of the results should always be something that you can practically look based on the intervention that you're looking at. But practically, I think as we always define the different results levels, I think output is what we will actually be able to get very as soon as you're done with your activities, because these are the deliverables that can actually be felt or seen immediately as soon as the activity is done. Whereas outcomes, we are expecting them to actually be able to happen in the short term or in the immediate intermediate level of the result. But the time frame, sometimes a lot of experts are not able to tie with time frames, because you will tie with time frames, interventions are different. So sometimes there could be some element of truth, because I've seen a lot of arguments around that, experts trying to really say whether we can coin timelines, and sometimes we resist that because of the aspect of the fact that interventions will always be different, and it's always good to look at interventions and see when I have these outputs, is it possible to get the outcomes almost immediately, or outcomes will actually be able to happen at the intermediate level or at the short-term level of this project intervention. So I think that's what I can say for now. Lamson Osira. So he could be right, he could be wrong, but that's something that is still under a lot of discussion with experts as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so welcome, Lamson. And I think at this point I can ask Irene to be able to come in and take us through the next part of the project. And please, sorry for people who had some comments to give, feedback to give, some questions also to ask. And as I said earlier on, please feel free to write to us what you wanted to be able to air, and we will be able to respond if it's a question. If it's a feedback, we will also be able to appreciate that. So thank you for now. Let me hand you over to Irene. Irene, you can take over.
Okay, thank you so much, Stephen. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes.
Okay. Stephen, it has been a very wonderful presentation, and I know our participants are happy. We are going to share the recordings, but meanwhile, you can visit our YouTube page, that is Strategia Netherlands, so that you can view this recording and more that we have had in the recent past. We are going to have another free webinar. We have all your emails, and we're going to inform you on time, probably give you time to prepare for the same. Remember, we had said earlier on during the introduction that we are giving a 20% discount to participants from this webinar. Kindly visit our page, that is strategianetherlands.nl, for more info, and we will gladly share with you all the details of our courses. You can write to Debbie. Debbie had introduced herself earlier. Just write to Debbie at info@strategianetherlands.nl. And those who would like also to visit capacityafrica.com, you're also welcome to do so. Remember, we have certificate courses, diploma courses, and even postgraduate courses. So remember, this was just an introduction. If you would like to learn more about monitoring and evaluation and get into the concepts, kindly visit our website. And I'd like to request the host to share the screen with all our details so that the participants can get the emails. I'm also going to type it on the chat section for those who are not seeing it. Nikron, you can share your screen, and then we can get the information about the two campuses kindly. Yeah, so if you look at your screen, you can see the website and even the email to use. Those who are asking for me to write it on the chat section, I hope you can all see it. www.strategianetherlands.nl, and then you can write to us info@strategianetherlands.nl. So remember, we don't only offer monitoring and evaluation course, we also have over 200 courses to offer. Those in the Humanitarian and Development Organizations, you can always visit our sites and get a course that fits you well. And remember, we are also offering the courses in partnership with capacityafrica.com. So both emails are on your screen. Nikron, if you can enlarge your screen for the participants to see it clearly. Yeah, so as he's doing that, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you very much for your patience, for staying with us throughout the 2 and over hours. And we will always invite you for more webinars. So thank you so much. If you have any query, just write to us. Those who were not given a chance to ask the questions, you can always send to our emails. And somebody is asking about is it in euros or dollars? I'll let Debbie answer that. Whether the money is in euros or dollars. Debbie, are you there? Okay, so for Strategia Netherlands, the money is in euros, while for Capacity Africa is in dollars. I hope that is right information, Debbie.
Hi, Irene. Yes, I was trying to unmute, but I was waiting for the host to unmute me. Yes, indeed. Strategia Netherlands, our courses are basically priced in euros for the obvious reason that we are in the Netherlands. So that would be in euros, but remember you're getting a 20%, so it's a really, really good deal for a training of this nature. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Debbie. So I think we have gotten that, and thank you so much for joining us. Remember, visit our YouTube page, strategianetherlands.nl, and get to see a recording of this session plus other previous sessions. And also we will share with you any info about free webinars in future. From all of us here, thank you so much, and we wish you a good day, good evening, and good afternoon from wherever you are. Thank you so much, and bye-bye from here.
Before you go, can you please repeat the prices again, please?
Okay, Nikron, can you put up your screen kindly with the prices?
Hello.
Nikron?
Hello.
Okay, so if you can see on our screen, the certificate course is 400 euros. The diploma is 800 euros, and the postgraduate diploma is 1,200 euros. I hope you can now see it.
Yes. Hello, Irene.
Yes.
I can say these prices in Africa, they're very expensive.
Remember, we are giving a 20% discount. Okay, so just write to us, and we will always give you a discount kindly. In Africa, from Capacity Africa, the prices are in dollars. Okay.
Hello.
So just write to us. We are going to give you a discount, 20% discount. I hope that is clear.
Yes. Do you hear me, Erin?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. We understood the price.
Yes,
but,
yes. We have one question.
As the time period of the courses.
Okay. The certificate course takes 3 months. The diploma course takes 6 months, while the postgraduate course will take you for a whole year.
So is it an online or
yes,
physical
it
attendance?
is online. The classes are online, and we also have, it is online, so we have Zoom sessions for the classes once you join.
Hello.
Have I answered you?
Excuse me, madam.
Yes.
For postgraduate diploma, 1,200.